Yo, 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 what's up, everyone? Sorry for the late video. Just had some things couldn't get to it. I'm recording this Thursday, the 3rd, 11:47. The Bucks just lost in terrible fashion. Not going to talk about that yet because that is week 5. I am still on week 4. This is the week 4 recap. I want to talk about week 4 today. Um, Sorry, I'm recording in my room. Couldn't get to my studio this week, but still got to get the video out for you guys. So, enough talking about that. Let's get straight to week 4. The first thing I got to talk about is 79.9 points. Like, all week I've been thinking about it, asking different people suggestions. How do I roast Tony for only scoring 79.9 points? I thought Dennis was going to be the first person to score under 80, but apparently it's Tony. I mean, Dennis was seriously, his team was so bad. He was about to go 0 and 16, but Tony said, "Hold my beer. I'm going to lose to that man." Taras's team in week 4 almost scored double Tony's points. His team was so bad. If I took the top 5 kickers of week 4 and combined their score, only 5 kickers, they would have outscored Tony's team by 11 points. And I want to remind you all, we start 10 players in our lineups, but the top 5 kickers would have beat Tony. That's how bad Tony's team was. I mean, I could have built a better fantasy team of 10 players off the waiver wire last week. That's how bad Tony's team was. I mean, his name is the Kansas City Chiefs, but he has to change that name because the Kansas City Chiefs actually win games. Tony, you're not winning no games with 79.9 points. Your team fell harder, went from a high down to such a low rock bottom. That team fell harder than Adolf Hitler did at Nazi Germany. If your fantasy team was a grade, you wouldn't have even gotten a B. You got a 79. That's not even enough for a B. That's a C grade. That's how bad your fantasy team was. And we're allowed to go over 100 points. We're not capped at 100. You know, me as a team, I've spent more fab this year than the amount of points that you scored in week 4. I spent more than $879 of fab this year already. It's only week 4 and your team couldn't even score that many points. Another interesting fact, Jordan Love will make more money this year in 2024. He'll make $81.5 million in 2024 after incentives. That's more millions than the amount of points that Tony scored in week 4. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Alvin Kamara all have more fantasy points than the amount of, they have more fantasy points on the season than the amount of fantasy points that Tony scored. That's only through 4 weeks. You know, whew, that was a lot. That was a lot. I think that's enough roasts for now. But I think it's safe to say I don't have to mention that Dennis only scored 87 points. I would have roasted him so hard, but he won. He won. Tony didn't. That's why I went really hard on Tony. Dennis won. He's not going 0 and 16 like I hoped. They would have made some great content for the podcast. I would have loved to keep up with Dennis, but he won. So, Dennis, you're lucky this week. I'm not going to mention your team. But I will say week 4, one of the best weeks we've had so far in fantasy. It was close matchups all around. There was even a game that ended with 0.6 point difference. Got to watch out for those stat corrections. Another game ends with the last minute Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown to take the lead on Monday night. And my team apparently took an L, and it was the biggest blowout of the week. And I only lost by 9 points. That's like 9 points? That's a 30-yard touchdown. I don't even think you can count that as a blowout. But apparently, Sleeper said it was the biggest blowout because I lost by the most amount of points. 9 points was the biggest gap. That's how good our week was. So let's go to the biggest blowout of the week, matchup by matchup. Kiwi, Team Marvin's Room versus David, VIR. 120.5 fantasy points to 111.32. Now, first of all, I want to say, I know I've been complaining a lot. I don't want to complain too much more. That's why I'm starting with my team so I can just get it out and then get on to your guys' teams and some good analysis. But Rashee Rice, are you serious, dude? This guy gets injured. I don't know if you guys seen the play yet, but the play basically was Patrick Mahomes throws a pick. This guy is about to return it for a pick six. So what does Rashi Rice do? Dude comes out of nowhere from behind, punches the ball out, so the defender fumbles it, so it's a second fumble. And as Rashi Rice punches the ball out, Patrick Mahomes then goes for the knees of the defender, but the defender jumps over Mahomes, and instead Mahomes dives shoulder first into the right knee of Rashi Rice. That knee goes backwards. Everyone's saying it's an ACL tear. Dude's out for the season. They haven't confirmed it yet, but that was like the second drive of the game. Rashi Rice gets injured, 0 points. Like, I seriously just needed a guy to score 9 fantasy points. Are you telling me that Rashi Rice, he was a top four receiver in fantasy before he got injured, couldn't score me 9 fantasy points on that Kansas City offense where he's the only guy that looked productive? I think he so would have scored it. And I actually would have had a win if Rashi Rice didn't get injured. But once again, Team IR lives up to its name. Rashi Rice gets injured. And the bigger storyline here, Kiwi gets his first win of the season. Dude isn't going 0-16 either. Kiwi and Dennis in the same team get in the same week get their first team win. Crazy. Okay, we'll go to the standouts. My team first because I lost. The bad, Rashi Rice, obviously 0 points. That's really bad. He sucked because he got injured. Thank you, Patrick Mahomes. Everyone else, they were kind of average. I mean, I feel like everyone on my team got a touchdown, but like no yards. They were all right around maybe 10 points, other than Brock Bowers. I mean, the guy everyone expected, he's a rookie tight end, to be really good. He was good through the first couple weeks, and now Devontae Adams was injured. No, with his hamstring, no Devontae Adams. Who's the number one target on the offense? Brock Bowers? Nope. That dude had 3 targets, only 2 catches, only like 4 points. Brock Bowers was trash. We expected him to do better, but he could not. That was like really the big bad on my team. And the good on my team, really it was the commies, the commanders. Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson. Jaden Daniels 24 points, Brian Robinson 18 points. Both had a rushing touchdown. Jaden Daniels also had a passing touchdown. Jaden Daniels 24 points, Brian Robinson 18 points. That's just I had that Commanders backfield locked up. They scored 42 points in that game. My fantasy players are going off, but I don't know if some of you know this. Jeremy McNichols. So I basically started Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson. I thought I'd have that whole backfield because Austin Eckler, the backup running back, is injured. I'm like, I'm getting every point. Passing, Jaden Daniels. Rushing, Jaden Daniels or Brian Robinson. Boom, I'm getting every fantasy point. They're going to beat the Cardinals. I'm going to get a lot of points. They do score 42 points. Those two guys do good. But Jeremy McNichols, the backup running back, gets 8 carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. Are you kidding me? Just give me 1 or 2 of those rushing touchdowns and my team wins. That was the worst. But also good on my team was Justin Jefferson. I want y'all to put some respect on my man's name. Justin Jefferson is so good. Does not matter which quarterback he's playing with. He's making Sam Darnold look like an MVP. Justin Jefferson is so good. He has a touchdown in every game this season. He's right now the wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Dude is such a beast. Justin Jefferson. Don't want you guys to hear you guys talk about him anymore. He is great. Fell too far in the draft. Okay, enough about my team. My team sucks. Everyone's injured. Let's go to Kiwi's team. The bad. Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers looks like he sucks in that offense. Everyone's overhyping how much Mark Andrews sucks. He had 0 points. But Zay Flowers himself doesn't look too good either. He scored 3.8 points and 1.5 points in the last 2 weeks. I mean, other than that game where he had a big touchdown, he had 8 points against Kansas City. Zay Flowers hasn't looked too good. 1.5 points in this game. Only 2 targets as the alpha wide receiver on that team. I mean, I think we should have kind of expected this because they already wanted to run the ball. We knew that with the Ravens. I mean, last year, Gus Edwards had like 13 rushing touchdowns or 12, and that's Gus Edwards. He sucked. Gus Edwards had that much work, and you bring in a guy as good as Derrick Henry. I mean, dude's like a Hall of Famer, such a good running back. You bring that guy into the team, what are you going to do? Obviously, run the ball like crazy. Unless they're losing, which I don't see that happening a lot. They lost to the Chiefs. They lost, I don't know how, to the Raiders. But other than that, I don't see the Ravens losing to many teams. they're just going to run the ball down everyone's throat with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Justice Hill, and then a few passes to Justice Hill. I don't see Zay Flowers doing that good. He's looking like a bust. Also, Bijan. Bijan did not do good for where you drafted him. He had 9.4 points. We know who's the better B Rob now. Brian Robinson, 18 points. Bijan, only 9.4. But I will say, for Bijan's credit, he did have a 30-yard receiving touchdown that was called back. I looked at the video. The penalty didn't even look like a penalty. It was a bad holding play that the defender wouldn't have been able to even tackle Bijan. So he would have had a good day if he did have that receiving touchdown. But so far, he's looking bad in the run game. All his fantasy points is coming from pass catching work. That's not really what you want in your main running back. You want him to have rushing work and pass catching work. Bijan is not looking like a top 3 running back like he was drafted. Now, the good on Kiwi's team. David Montgomery. I mean, I'm bringing him up first because this is why I lost my matchup. David Montgomery is the guy that kind of finished the final blow. I was up by like 13 points. He had Montgomery and JSN on Monday night. Montgomery had a rushing touchdown first drive of the game. I want to ask this question. Is David Montgomery the most consistent running back in the league? I mean, if you look at him, dude is on a great offense of the Lions. Even if they lose, he still produces. When they win, he still produces. He has a rushing touchdown in every game. The games that he doesn't have a lot of carries, he does have receptions. I mean, his fantasy points so far this year, 15.8, 15, 19.7, 14.5. He doesn't score more than 20 points, but he doesn't score less than 15 points. He's always going to be in between 15 and 20 fantasy points. He's right now the RB8. That's a draft steal. He's doing amazing. Such a consistent running back. Wish I could have him on my team. Kiwi, might shoot you some trade offers for him. Also, the good on Kiwi's team was CJ Stroud. 23.5 fantasy points. I mean, I will say they did play Jacksonville. So take it what you will. He didn't have Tank Dell, but they played the Jags defense. Jag defense sucks. But CJ Stroud still did good, 23.5. I think this will change a little bit when Joe Mixon comes back and they actually have a regular running back. They can have a run game. But so far, CJ Stroud, that's actually his first good fantasy week. Other than that 18, 14, 9, that was not good. But his first good fantasy week, it's good to finally see that from your quarterback that you drafted. And finally, 26 points from Kiwi's San Francisco 49ers defense. They did have a pick 6 that really helps them a lot. But 26 points is crazy from a defense. My defense had a defensive touchdown. They scored 12. And his defense still outscored my defense by 14 points. That's insane. And I'm just so upset because this is literally the second week in a row that I've played a defense that has went crazy. Last week, Rossi's Jets scored 17 on me. This week, Kiwi's 49ers scored 26 on me. This is getting annoying with these stupid defenses already. But yeah, that was the good on Kiwi's team. Now, let's go to the bench. Kiwi's bench. Kenneth Walker goes crazy. And not just he goes crazy. He just first game back off injury against a good run defense. He just went insane. 31 points, 3 rushing touchdown on 12 carries. Zach Charbonnet is going straight to the bench. You got to play Kenneth Walker. He looks so much like the better running back. That's a crazy steal on his bench that he can plug right into his running back lineup. Deebo Samuel, he looks like he's back. I thought he would be injured for longer. Comes back, 8.7 fantasy points. Not a bad day, and as he gets healthier, I think he will score more fantasy points. They'll get him more involved in the run game. He's a good option there. So that's pretty good off his fantasy bench. And also, Kiwi has a good backup tight end. He has 2 solid tight ends he could start. Jake Ferguson on the bench. Dallas Goedert, he started both over 8 points. That's another good thing on his bench. Moving on to my bench. I only had 2 players that played full games, finished their game on my bench. And one of them got 0 points. And the other one is Samaje Perine. That's how bad my bench is. A.J. Brown, injured. Joe Mixon, didn't play. Raheem Mostert, didn't play. Anthony Richardson, injured, left the game early. I had Kyle Pitts, who got 0, and Samaje Perine. That is a terrible bench. I'm literally just hoping I squeak by one more win in the next few weeks, just waiting for my injured guys to come back from injury. That's what happens when your team, the IR. Okay, next, let's move on to matchup Dennis, which is Taras 2.0, versus Tony, the Kansas City Chiefs. I know I already talked a little bit about it, roasted Tony hard for 79.9. And if any of you want, add some roasts to Tony, 79.9 points. Change my team name to that just because I'm playing him this week. I want to remind him how terrible his fantasy team is. Dennis scored 87.34 to Tony 79.9. Dennis comes out with the dub. This fantasy game sucked. It was so terrible. But, you know, if Jameson Williams didn't have a 70-yard receiving touchdown, what's crazy is wouldn't have been just Tony, but Dennis also would have scored under 80 points this week. That is insane. We would have had two teams under 80 points. But the even crazier thing is everyone was complaining about Rosty winning these close games at 103, 105 fantasy points, and he would win the first 2 weeks. Dennis just won, only scoring 87 points. We are not supposed to allow him get a win at 87 points. What are we doing, Tony? Vlad scored. Vlad's team this week, he lost. Spoiler alert there. Vlad lost, but he scored 66.7 more points than Dennis. And Vlad lost and Dennis won. Just to put that into perspective, if we added 11 touchdowns to Dennis's score, he still would have lost against Vlad. He still would have scored less points than Vlad. Dennis scored 11 touchdowns less than Vlad and won, even though Vlad lost. That's how fantasy works. That's why we love it, but we hate it. Dennis loves it. Vlad hates it. At least that week. Okay, let's go on to the standouts. Tony, the standouts on his team was nobody. Dude scored 79 points. No one stood out on his team except for the bad. So let's go into the bad. Tony's team, the bad was everybody except CeeDee Lamb. Everyone except his, top 3 drafted player in fantasy this season. Everyone sucks. CeeDee Lamb scored 20 points. Everyone else, Saquon scored 12, but when it's Saquon Barkley, RB1 or 2 on the year, RB2 on the year, you expect him to get more than 12 fantasy points. Especially with no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith, Saquon's got to do way better than that. Allen. Let's talk about Josh Allen a little bit. So far, I thought he was clear in a way the number 1 quarterback, looking so good. But so far, dude has had 2 boom games where he scored over 30 points, but 2 bust games where he scored under 10 points. If your quarterback's scoring under 10 points, I know from experience having Anthony Richardson on my roster, it is almost impossible to win. So he's winning Tony Weeks, but he's losing Tony Weeks. That's kind of sketchy at quarterback. Last year, Josh Allen only had 4 weeks where he scored under 20 points. This year, he already has 2 weeks where he's under 10. That's pretty bad. He is not looking like the regular Josh Allen. Maybe losing Stephon Diggs is a big difference. I don't know. You tell me. Also, Travis Etienne. I want to highlight Travis Etienne for the bad because he only scored 6.5 points. Tank Bigsby, I think, scored more fantasy points this game. And so far, he's been pretty average. But that's because of touchdowns. Without touchdowns this year, if you take away his 2 rushing touchdowns, he sucks. He would have scored 3 points, 6 points, 10 points, 6 points. That is terrible. But you include the rushing touchdowns, he does all right. But Etienne, he's looking pretty bad. That Jags offense is looking pretty bad. I don't know. That's bad. But moving on to Tony's good. Like I said, it was CeeDee Lamb. He was basically the only one good on his team. He scored 20 points. But that's all thanks to a 55-yard touchdown. Without that 55-yard touchdown, he was terrible. Without those 55 yards, he was like 6 catches for like 40, 45 yards, something like that. That is not good for CeeDee Lamb. He's just not looking the same like he did last year. And I think it might be because literally they have no one else in that offense other than CeeDee Lamb. Everyone knows where that ball is going from Dak. So Tony's team really struggled this week. He went from looking like a great team facing really high scoring opponents, scoring really high, to dropping down real fast, coming down to earth. All right, let's move on to Dennis. The bad on Dennis's team, low key, is his attitude. Dennis seems like he does not want to play fantasy football. He's done with fantasy football. I mean, it was Monday night. This guy has a wide receiver that he's playing. He traded for this wide receiver. He's playing him. This wide receiver has the potential to, at any moment, to score you a deep touchdown. He's a deep threat. At any second in the game, he can score a deep touchdown and win you the week. You have that wide receiver, you're playing against the defense, and you're down by like 8 points, and you're typing GG. Literally, I typed on Monday night, I typed in GG in the chat because I already lost. David Montgomery scored that touchdown. Kiwi was like down by 1 point or up by 1 point already. It was like basically game over. So I type in GG in the chat, and Dennis goes, "Yeah, GG, Tony." Like, dude, you didn't lose yet. Why are you typing that? He's just like done with fantasy football. Dude's like complaining how much his team sucks. His attitude really, really sucks. But, I would have that same attitude if I had your team, Dennis. But let's go to the actual bad players on your team. Brees Hall, he does not look good. 2.8 points, RB2 drafted overall. And to think that your bold prediction was Brees Hall was RB1 overall on the season, dude is nowhere near. Braylon Allen is stealing touches. Brees Hall can't. Brees Hall had 10 carries for 4 yards. I mean, a lot of it was goal line work, but he couldn't get into that end zone. 10 carries for 4 yards. That's less than half a yard per carry, dude. That sucks. For your supposed to be your RB1, that is terrible. And let's also talk about his right tackle that he put in his tight end slot, Mark Andrews. That guy is not a receiving tight end. That guy's just a blocker now. He's a blocking tight end. That's what he's become. That's what the Ravens just want. They just want tight ends to block. They just want offensive linemen, extra offensive linemen, big tight ends just to block, to push everyone, bulldoze everyone. So then you can have Derrick Henry getting 10-yard head start to run into the center of your defense and just crush your guys, or break a 87-yard touchdown down the sideline faster than every player. Like, that's all the Ravens want to do. And I don't blame him because they're winning games like that. Mark Andrews is not good. Another 0-point game. Dennis, I think you made the right decision dropping Mark Andrews. The good on Dennis's team, Jameson Williams, 70-yard touchdown to win you the week. That's a beast, man, right there. You traded for him. That's why you traded for him, to win you weeks like that. But he only had 2 catches. Jameson Williams scored 15 fantasy points on 2 catches, and he only had 2 targets. 2 catches, 2 targets, 80 yards, and a touchdown. That's kind of crazy. But he still came through. Can't expect it every week, but you got to take the bad weeks if you also want to take the boom weeks. This was a boom week. Thanks to that, Dennis, you got it right in the perfect moment because Tony scored 79 points. He left you that door open. Jameson Williams runs through that door, gets you the win. Also good on Dennis's team, Lamar Jackson, 23.64 fantasy points, currently RB2 on the year. He's looking good. He's rushing for touchdowns, passing for touchdowns. I mean, Lamar's just going to be a top quarterback rest of the way. Dennis, he's like, I thought Brees Hall was your bright spot on your team. It's looking like Lamar because, right now quarterbacks are kind of struggling, especially the ones we drafted. And Lamar, he's one of the good ones that's actually doing good. Let's go to your bench, Dennis. Honestly, you had a lot of average players on your bench, but they're all unstartable. Because you averaged, of all the players on your bench that played, I'm not counting Tank Dell because he didn't play, but other than that, you had 5 players that played. They averaged 7.25 fantasy points per player. And you had no one less than 5 points and no one more than 10.3 points. So they're all right in between that 10 to 5 range. That is not good on your bench. You want your bench to have upside for them to boom and to be able to replace your starters. You don't want just a 5-point guy on your bench. That kind of sucks. That's like such an average bench because if your team's performing like bad as it is right now, you can't really replace with your bench with any of those guys. Put them in your starting lineup if you know they're going to only score you 7 points. You can't win off 7 points. And Tony had his, what's crazy is, first of all, dude is rostering 2 Jags wide receivers. Like, of all the teams that you roster 2 wide receivers, you're going to pick the Jacksonville Jaguars even after you already have Travis Etienne. Tony, how do you like the Jaguars? Their offense sucks. Trevor Lawrence is overrated. They are 0-4 right now, I think. And you're rostering two Jags wide receivers. But it pays off this week. They both go off. 18.9 for Brian Thomas, 15.6 for Christian Kirk. But the other thing about Tony's bench is your running backs finally came back down to earth. J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, they're looking average again. 7, 8 points. You know, ETN sucks. James Cook came back down to earth. All those running backs you wanted to trade all of a sudden don't look like such good trade pieces. Okay, next, let's go to another one of the two most interesting matchups of this week. Dan, team I'm on top of the world, versus Rosty, team Dunk Squad, 138.06 to 133.20. This was very interesting. Amon Ra versus Sam Laporta. That was crazy. This matchup was just crazy overall. I mean, it just flip-flopping back and forth. Like, literally, after Sunday morning, I thought Rossi had no chance. Dan is winning. He has Amon Ra on Monday night. Dude's a beast. Dan's got it in the bag. But then, comes Sunday night, Rossi has no chance. Guess what happens? Boom. Dan got Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry runs the ball down the throat of his opponents, and that is Dan. Dan is the one that's facing Derrick Henry this week, and he gets 30 points scored on him. Derrick Henry almost rushes for 200 yards, I'm sorry. He just goes crazy. So now it's like, boom, Rossi's got it in the bag. Derrick Henry, big game. Rossi, he has, going into Monday night, a 16-point lead over Amon-Ra and the Titans defense, and he has Sam Laporta. And then, late in the game, Titans defense is doing pretty good. Amon-Ra just passes for a touchdown. He's doing good. Rossi's just barely down. What happens in the fourth quarter? Sam Laporta catches the ball, runs down the sideline, goes out of bounds, gets enough points for Rossi to go up by like 1 point. Oh, Rossi thinks he's secured the dub because his dying seconds of the fourth quarter, Lions score. Seahawks are going to get the ball. They're going to try to drive down the field to either score or not. Then the Lions are going to run out the clock. Amon-Ra's getting nothing else. What happens right after that? Last play for the Lions before they kick a field goal. But what happens? Jared Goff goes for the end zone, throws the ball. Amon-Ra in the corner, wide open, touchdown to secure Dan a 5-point win. That touchdown swings Dan back to winning. I mean, this game was back and forth. Such an interesting game. I mean, if you guys weren't watching this matchup and Vlad versus Taras on Monday night, I don't know what you're doing. Such an interesting game. So much fantasy scoring. It was awesome. But let's go to Rossi's teams. The standouts, the bad. Patrick Mahomes. He put him on this trading block. Rossi knew this was going to happen, but he wasn't bold enough to bench him. 13 points. Doesn't help him that Rashee Rice gets injured, but somehow Patrick Mahomes keeps sucking for fantasy, having bad stats, but his team wins. I don't know. I think you finally got to sit him. Patrick Mahomes is not playing good. Also, Devin Singletary, 4.3 points on Thursday night. I saw a whole bunch of people saying Devin Singletary was a good play. The Cowboys have a bad run defense. They're going to run all over him. The Giants, Devin Singletary is going to go crazy. 4.3 points is bad. That's why you just can't trust a guy like Devin Singletary. Right when you think he's about to do good, go crazy, he gives you a performance like this. That's why he's not one of the top running backs in the league. Also, Brandon Ayuk. 5.8 fantasy points from the wide receiver position. I don't know what's up with Brandon Ayuk. Dude got paid, and guess what? He just decides to disappear. Like, seriously, Brandon Ayuk, what is going on? Second week in a row where Juwan Jennings outscores you? Brother, you're supposed to be the wide receiver 2, if not the wide receiver 1 on the team, and you're getting outscored by Juwan Jennings. Like, 5.8 points is not going to cut it. Something's just wrong with the guy. I think he was sitting out too long. He just needs some time to practice and get back into shape. Brandon Ayuk is not looking good. But let's go to the good side of Rossi's team. Like I said, Derrick Henry, dude is like the GOAT. Dude, I don't know what. I think it's like one of those moments where there's a great player playing football and we're not noticing it. He's like, we're just getting too used to it. But then when he's gone, we're going to miss him. We're going to look back like 5 years from now, look at highlights of Derrick Henry when he's retired, 10 years from now when he's in the Hall of Fame. We're going to look back at highlights of Derrick Henry and we're going to say, how is this guy like 6'3", 250 pounds, 30 years old and older, and dude is Dude is able to run straight into the middle of your biggest linebacker, truck him to the ground, stiff arm him, throw cornerbacks to the ground. But yet, if you give him the ball down the sideline, he's going to cut it, bounce it outside, and run past your fastest safety 87 yards for a touchdown. How are we not realizing the greatness of Derrick Henry? We're like, he went to the Ravens, we're dropping him down at fantasy. Nope, dude is still good. Dude, I don't want to jinx it, but he doesn't get injured that often. Derrick Henry is literally one of the greatest running backs of all time in our generation. I mean, you talk about McCaffrey, you talk about Gurley when he played, Le'Veon Bell. Derrick Henry is right up there with the best of them, if not better. Dude is amazing. Derrick Henry. So good. 30 fantasy points. I already talked about him. Dude ran over all over the Bills. I mean, one thing I want to mention, Jim Harbaugh is such a D-bag. I don't know who's the Ravens coach, Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh, whichever one of them it is. Are you kidding me? Literally, Derrick Henry had 199 rushing yards. And I don't know if you guys watched the game, but the commentators were like talking about it the whole time Sunday night. They were saying Derrick Henry has 190, 180 rushing yards. He just needs to get to 200, and then he's going to have the NFL record for most games rushing for 200 yards. Right now, he has 6. He would have had 7 if he would have got it. He has 6 right now. He's tied with like Adrian Peterson and like some other guy. I don't know, like LT, I think, LaDainian Tomlinson. He's tied with those guys for 6 200-yard rushing games. Derrick Henry was at 199 yards. It was third down and 7. He just needs to get 1 yard to get to 200 rushing yards. There's like a minute left in the game. If you don't, yeah, I get it. Convert the third down and you kill the game right there. But you're up. You're winning by 25 points. The Bills have like 0% chance to come back. Give Derrick Henry the ball right up the middle. Let him truck a guy and get 1 yard. And what do? You decide to pass the ball. You call a passing play. Like, that was the most frustrating thing for me. Just give Derrick Henry the ball. Let him get the 200 yards. He's literally playing so good for your team. Anyways, enough about Derrick Henry. Deontay, by the way, going back to Derrick Henry just for a second. If I was in my studio, the picture I would have put up on the wall would have been Derrick Henry because he is that good. I'm standing by my bold prediction. 20 rushing touchdowns this year for Derrick Henry. He's on pace for like 21 or something like that. Deontay Johnson. Dude is a beast. He is so great on Rossi's team. Such a good addition. He is so lucky that Dalton is in and Bryce Young is out. That just saved Deontay Johnson's move so much. He went from the Steelers, a bad passing offense, to a Panthers that was even a worse passing offense. Even worse. Doesn't matter how much money you're making. He was so frustrated, but now Andy Dalton comes in looking good. Deontay Johnson is looking so amazing. And lastly, James Conner. I know Vlad likes to talk about Aaron Jones versus James Conner. He sent all that stuff. But James Conner is still good. He is really, really good. He was a great pick where he was picked at. He scored 17 fantasy points when his team lost. 17 fantasy points. His team lost 14-42. Dude still got 18 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. James Conner is amazing. Very good pick. Really good for Rossi. All right, let's go on to Dan's team. The bad. Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. James Conner did good. Kyler Murray did bad. It makes Kyler Murray's performance even worse since he was facing against James Conner on the other team. Kyler Murray, 9.98, couldn't even score. 10 points. I mean, I don't know what happened that game. They couldn't do anything about the Commanders. The Commanders just had the ball all game. Kyler Murray looked like he sucked. He really needed to step it up. Okay, next. Also, bad was Devon Achane. Devon Achane only scored 4.4 points. He's looking really bad without Tua. Because I think, like, the defense knows that the Dolphins cannot throw deep. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle are not beating us over the top. Let's just everyone come down, stop the run, stop the short passes to Tyreek Hill, the short behind the line of scrimmage to Devon Achane. They're just stopping everything. It was the Titans defense. They're good. I wouldn't say they're great. I wouldn't say they're top 5 defense. They're good. But you have Tyreek Hill, one of the best wide receivers, Devon Achane, a great running back. You should still be able to score points on that defense, but they couldn't do anything. Mike McDaniel just cannot. call the right plays. I don't know. Devon Achane, borderline not startable until Tua comes back. But the good on Dan's team, I will say, this is like, other than those two bad I mentioned, this is like one of the weeks where literally good, everyone on Dan's team did good. All his receivers and running backs. They all played good. His team's looking scary. Jonathan Taylor, 18 points. Kamara, 21 points. Amon-Ra, 17 points. Mike Evans, 19 points. Jaden Reed, 23 points. Kincaid, 7 points. They're just all looking good. All looking really scary. Dan's team looked really, really good. All right, now let's go to Dan's bench. Dan's bench, he had Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed looking not too bad now of a waiver wire pick. He scored 11 points, but not just that. He's getting involved in the short stuff, the short targets. 11 targets, 8 receptions, 83 yards. He's not only getting the deep stuff, now he's getting the short stuff. So watch out. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed is looking like a good wide receiver there. Also, T. Higgins, another good bench piece, 9 points, finally looking a little bit better. Second week back from injury. But, Dan, no backup running backs for the bye weeks. No backup running backs. Just not looking good in the running back department. Got to make some moves on the waivers. Okay, Rusty, his bench. What was so surprising is he benched Tyreek Hill and Garrett Wilson. If I would have told you that in the beginning of the season, you would say you're crazy. But it was the right move. That's crazy. It was the right decision to bench Tyreek Hill and Garrett Wilson. That is crazy. That's the biggest storyline on his bench. Xavier Worthy, yeah, he did good. He got a deep touchdown with Mahomes because Rashee Rice is out. But it's Xavier Worthy's going to play good when he gets a deep touchdown. When he doesn't, he's going to suck. And lastly, Rossi finally has a good backup running back on his bench. Rico Dowdle, 12 points. He had a receiving touchdown. He's getting the majority of the work on the Cowboys. Rico Dowdle is looking good. I've been roasting Rossi's team the first 2-3 weeks because he had no backup running backs. What happens if one of his running backs got injured? So far, none of them have gotten injured. But now he has a backup finally, Rico Dowdle. And the final matchup, let's move on to it. The most entertaining was Taras Team Love Thy Neighbors versus Vlad Don't Fear Dak is here. 154.62 to 154.04. It was a 0.58 difference in score. That is crazy. I mean, this is what you live for in fantasy, these games where literally a stat correction can change the outcome of the game. You know, I don't know how many lead changes they had. I talked to Taras a little bit, but he said like the whole week on Sunday, the whole day, it was like back and forth. They were like super close the whole time. But I think it was probably a lot of lead changes, just back and forth when a game ends that close. And the biggest difference was Taras had 100% accuracy in his coaching. That was the different bit. That was the biggest difference. Vlad left like 20 points or something like that he could have improved his lineup by on the bench. But Taras, perfect lineup. That's exactly what he needed. Won by 0.58 fantasy points. And the best thing of it was that it was on Monday night. It came down to 2 players on Monday night. That was the most entertaining thing. I mean, if you weren't watching this matchup, I don't know what you were doing on Monday night. This was so entertaining to watch. Okay, let's go to the standouts. Vlad, the bad. He didn't really have anyone on his team do that bad, so I'll say Dak. Because dude is hyping up Dak. His team name is Dak. On Thursday night, he was telling us how Dak is so good. He took a victory lap too early because Dak sucks. Only 16.74 points. Vlad, do you realize that if Dak scored zero point 0.7 more fantasy points, it was 0.58, but let's just round it up to 0.70, you would have won. If he would have had 7 extra rushing yards in that game, you would have won. Or if he would have had 18 extra passing yards, you would have won. But he couldn't do it because Dak sucks. He always chokes when you need him the most. Dak is literally the worst. You'll find out during the season, Vlad. And then you'll finally, after years and years, agree with us that Matthew Stafford is a million times better than Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott shouldn't be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the leagues. He should just be an average Joe. And he's only looked at it this hyped because he's on the Cowboys. Okay, the good on Vlad's team. Jordan Mason looks amazing without CMC. 23 points against the Patriots, over 100 yards, a rushing touchdown again. I mean, I think the dude's leading the NFL in carries. He's had 100 rushing yards in 3 of his first 4 games, a touchdown in 3 of his first 4 games. Like, he's looking like such a good Christian McCaffrey replacement. It almost makes you wonder, Vlad, do you want Christian McCaffrey to stay out? Do you want him to stay a little bit injured? Because if Jordan Mason is looking this good without McCaffrey, if McCaffrey comes back, is he able to play, or is he like half playing, half not because he's injured? Are they splitting time? Like, maybe you want Mason to stay in all season. Maybe they keep McCaffrey out to fully heal until the playoffs so that Mason does better for Vlad in fantasy. I don't know. Just some things to think about. Also, Travis Kelce gets so lucky with the Rashee Rice injury. He would have been a bust this year if Rashee Rice didn't get injured. Finally has a good game, 12 points, 89 yards, 9 targets, 7 receptions. I mean, he's their wide receiver 1 now with Rashee Rice injured. He is their wide receiver 1. And lastly, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones had a good game. Vlad took a victory lap, 15.9 points, but he couldn't even score a touchdown. I will say, Aaron Jones is good. I'll admit it. I was wrong. He wasn't that bad of a draft pick. But there's 2 things to consider. He's old, so he always has injury risk. And secondly, this game that he did really good in, it was against the Green Bay Packers. He got so much work. Do you not think the coaches knew that he was playing against his old team? They wanted to give him a little extra work. Don't you think they wanted him to get in the end zone? But the dude just couldn't. Sam Darnold's just chucking touchdowns to every other player. Aaron Jones couldn't get it done. 15 points without a touchdown is still great. But still, we'll see. It's a long season, Vlad. We'll see. All right, let's go to Taras. The bad. For him, it's basically also his quarterback. Jalen Hurts, 16 points. Now, I'm not going to say any of those stats if Jalen Hurts scored just a few more points because Taras won, so he didn't need Hurts to score any of those extra points. But 16 points when you have a tush-push touchdown, that's not something you expect from Jalen Hurts, the second quarterback drafted in fantasy. But he does have an excuse. He doesn't have Devontae Smith. He doesn't have A.J. Brown. With those guys out, Jalen Hurts plays a lot worse. When you only have Saquon Barkley rushing the ball and Dallas Goedert that you could throw the ball to, you don't expect a lot of fantasy performance from him. It's their bye week. Then both of those injured guys come back. Jalen Hurts should be looking a lot better. Also, the bad on Taras was his kicker and his defense, his special teams, basically. He went a little too heavy on the Steelers because he had the kicker, Chris Boswell, and their defense, and they scored 11 points total. That is not good for special teams. Taras almost blew his fantasy matchup with those special teams because Vlad had 27 points from his kicker and defense to Taras's 11. 16-point difference. And also, just so you know, Taras, Rosti, last week I played him. That's why I know this stat. He scored more points from his kicker and his defense than you did, 11 points. Now you might say, David, why is that surprising? Well, his kicker scored 0 points last week. His kicker scored 0 points, and his kicker plus his defense still scored more points than your kicker and defense, 11 points. Pretty bad outing from Taras' special teams, but can't roast him too hard. He got the dub. The good on Taras' team, first of all, let me say it, he finally has a running back too. Complaining enough about Zamir White, finally gets to sit him. Chuba Hubbard is him. Until Jonathan Brooks comes back from injury, whatever, the rookie, to steal some work, Chuba Hubbard is looking so amazing with Andy Dalton in that offense. 20 points, 100 yards, a touchdown on the ground, 4 receptions, 4 targets. Taras finally has an RB2, and his team is looking scary because of that. Also, Taras' wide receivers are great. His strategy to go all wide receivers is really paying off. Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin. Those 4 guys, his 3 wide receivers and his flex. This week, they averaged 18.7 points. That is amazing between four players here. Four wide receivers, 18.7 points. A lot of people didn't even have one wide receiver score that much. Taras had his four guys average. That's really what gave Taras the dub. And the bench. For Taras, there's really nothing to talk about his bench. He started a perfect lineup. There's nothing to mention about Taras's bench. Davante Adams, what's going to happen to him? We don't know. We'll see if he gets traded. We'll see if he stays injured and just sits out the rest of the season with the Raiders. I don't think he'll play for the Raiders again. And all those backup running backs, only one has hit so far, Chuba Hubbard. That's all you've needed, Taras. Other than that, I think you could drop the rest. So far, they're not hitting. Pick up some new guys off waivers and hope they hit. Vlad, he got some good backup running backs. Tony Pollard, 17.8. DeAndre Swift, 26. Zach Moss, 15.8. That's some really good backup running backs. Also, Jordan Addison is going to be a problem. I mean, just to kind of put it into perspective, he has 2 touchdowns, a receiving and a rushing in his first game back. Sam Darnold is looking good. Jordan Addison comes back and takes his role as a wide receiver 2, which Jalen Nailor took while he was injured. So Jordan Addison already has 2 touchdowns in this game. Last year, he had 10 touchdowns. Now, I know you might be saying Justin Jefferson wasn't there. It's going to steal some work. But he had 10 touchdowns last year. Justin Jefferson was God, but he had who knows at quarterback. But right now, Sam Darnold's playing like an MVP quarterback. He's throwing for a lot more touchdowns. He's leading the league in passing touchdowns. And Jalen Nailor, who's a wide receiver 2, has 3 touchdowns through the first 3 weeks. Now, Jordan Addison is going to steal that work back. He's just going to be a touchdown machine, I think. Vlad's got a steal there. Okay, I'm going long. Sorry, I really wanted to go through all those because it was a very, very interesting week this week. Also, I read your comments. I want to go over a few things, some suggestions. If you guys have any suggestions, what you want me to talk about more on this weekly recap, let me know. I'm going to go through the power rankings. I'll go points for, points against, all play, and then my personal power rankings. The points for, number 1, Dan has 557 points. Number 2, Taras, 537. Number 3, Vlad, 500. Number 4, Tony with 483. Number 5 is David with 472. Number 6 is Kiwi with 450. 7 was Rosti with 444. And number 8 is Dennis with 406. The points against, number 1 is Taras with 522. Number 2 is Kiwi with 507. Number 3 is Dan with 497. Number 4 is Tony with 495. Number 5 is Dennis with 475. Number 6 is me, David, with 462. Number 7 is Vlad with 449. And number 8 is Rosti with 443. Now the all play. This is basically what your record would be if your team faced every single team in the league every week. So number 1 is Taras. His record would be 21-7, 75% win percentage. Number 2 is Dan, would be 20-8, 71% win percentage. Number 3 is Tony, 17-11, 60% win percentage. Number 4 is Vlad, 16-12, 57%. Number 5 is David, that's me, I would go 12-16, 42%. 6 is Rosti, he would be 10-18, 35%. Number 7 is Kiwi, would be 9-19 with 32%. And number 8, of course, is Dennis. He is 7-21 with a 25% win, all played ranking. And now my personal power rankings. I don't know if I'll do these every week. I might do every other week because I don't think they're going to change that much every week. But basically what I did for power rankings is the team, if my team got erased from fantasy, what team I would take over as a manager, what team I would want to take over most as a manager. Number 1, I went Dan. It was really a toss-up between Dan and Taras here, but I don't know. I just think Dan's got... I know Taras's wide receivers are good, but I just like Dan's running backs are just a little bit deeper than Taras's, and he has good wide receivers. I'll take Dan. I mean, he's got the best record, 4-0. How do you not take Dan? So number 2 is obviously Taras. I really like his wide receivers. Number 3, a little bit of a surprise there. I will take the guy that sucks the most in our league, scores lower than 80 fantasy points in a week. My opponent this week 5 that I'm going to crush, Tony. I would take Tony's team, number 3. I mean, Josh Allen, great quarterback. Saquon Barkley, great running back. CeeDee Lamb, great wide receiver. Just those three pieces. He has a really good tight end. He has good depth. Pretty good bench. I would take over Tony's team. And number 4 is surprising here. I would take Rossi's team, number 4. I know he's low in points scored. I know Rossi barely squeezed out those wins. But when you have Derrick Henry, who's such a beast, and you have good wide receivers, Deontay Johnson now, Tyreek Hill, who's only going to get better when Tua comes back, Garrett Wilson, who's only growing rapport with Aaron Rodgers, I think I would take Rossi's team. Sam Laporta at tight end, James Conner running back. I would take Rossi's team. Number 5 is Vlad. I know you might have expected him a little bit higher, but in Dak, I do not trust. Jordan Mason is good. Kyron Williams is good. But he's just wide receivers. Chris Olave, Diggs, and DK. DK can keep it up. Olave and Diggs, I just don't trust them. They're just not those alpha wide receivers. Diggs is the wide receiver 2 on his team. Olave, their offense has been overperforming, and he's just not been the greatest. Vlad's wide receivers really bring him down. He has good running backs, Jordan Mason, Kyron, and Aaron Jones, but even good bench running backs. But I don't know. There's just something about Vlad's team. I like Rossi's players better. I just trust them more. Number 6, of course, is Kiwi. I would take over Kiwi's team. You know, he has the upside with Bijan. He has good running backs. He has the most consistent guy, Montgomery, Josh Jacobs. Kenneth Walker looks like a stud. And then his wide receivers are a little bit lacking. He only has Marvin Harrison. Good tight ends. Yeah, I take over Kiwi's team. And number 7, last but not least, I would pick a team that I could build together off of the waiver wire. I just start a team from scratch. That's my number 7 power ranked. I think I could build a team that is top 7 in our league if you just gave me players off the waivers. And number 8, bottom of the barrel, Dennis. I think I could build a team that's better than Dennis's off the waiver wire. Come at me if you want to, but that's how bad Dennis's team is this year. Okay, that's my power rankings. Final announcement. This is from Kiwi. He texted me to make this announcement to Tony, but also the rest of the league. Just because you have a fantasy player either in your lineup or on your bench and he has one good game, but still he sucks and he's a scrub, please do not put him on the trading block. If you don't want that player, if he's on your bench, you're not willing to put him in the starting lineup, then none of us want him either. So don't just put players on the trading block because they suck. We don't want those players. If you're thinking about dropping a player, but you put him on the trading block to see if anyone wants, nobody wants to trade for him. We're an 8-team league. Our starters are really good. Nobody wants to trade for that player. So don't put players on the trading block just because they have one boom week. It's very rare that somebody wants to trade for that player. So going to the trade block additions, Tony added Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk, both Jags wide receivers. I doubt he's gotten an offer yet. Nobody wants to trade for those guys. I mean, maybe Brian Thomas because he's a rookie, but I just don't know how much you could trust Trevor Lawrence. Finally, to close it out, bye-bye winless season for Dennis and Kiwi. Both get a dub, blah, blah, blah this week. I really wish we could have went longer with that. But the undefeated stays alive. I know we're all rooting against it. We all want Dan to get his first loss this week. Vlad, I know we hate your team. I know we don't like playing you in fantasy, but we think you could take him down this week. Defeat Dan so he does not go undefeated any longer. We don't want a repeat of Dennis. But so far, Dan stays alive for one more week, moves on to 4-0. I will see you all next week. You know, I really can't expect much this week. I don't think I can get a win. I hope I can, but really my only goal is that all my players will stay healthy. That's why I changed my team name from the IR. I think it was kind of like a curse because it was so true for my team. Hopefully it'll change a little bit. So I'll see you all next week. Sorry about the late upload this week. It might be a little bit late next week because I think I will be busy, but I will see. Thank you so much. Peace. See you in week 5.